It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I've met some of you before, and it's great seeing everyone again, and I really am looking forward to meeting a lot of you after this discussion. And I'd like to make this a discussion, so feel free to ask questions throughout. My briefing style is very informal. Can you hear me now? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll hold this. So my talk tonight is the remarriage market in your business. Who is the Encore bride? How about now? The green light's on. Okay, thank you. So the remarriage market in your business, who is the Encore bride? The objectives tonight for this talk is to educate about the state of remarriage in both blended and step families in the United States, to inform about the huge untapped remarriage market, to explain how the wedding industry-related businesses can meet the unique needs of the remarriage market, and to provide helpful tips on how wedding industry-related businesses can grow their businesses by focusing on Encore brides and grooms. Let's not forget the grooms. So I make a distinction between blended and step families, and I want to point out the difference. Does anybody know the difference? Okay. And how many of you have worked with remarrying couples as clients? Okay. And how many of you don't know if your clients have been remarrying after widowhood or divorce? Okay. The difference between the blended and the step family terms, there's a lot of debate in our society. You'll see talk about, well, we want to be called a step family. Then you'll see on a lot of the social media, well, we're not a step family, we're just a family, and a family is a family. You'll also see people saying we're bonus moms, bonus dads, and the list goes on. And there's an argument for every one of them, but my point in bringing this up is that you really have to stay in tune with your potential clients that are falling into this target demographic, because everybody has an opinion on it, and our society really hasn't come to a consensus on what to call these families. Another thing to consider is that there are a lot of people that are living like blended families, an adult, two adults, and maybe one has children, or maybe both of them have children. They may not be legally married, but they, for all intents and purposes, are living like a step family or blended family. They face the similar challenges and situations. So moving to the next slide, thanks. About us. My company has a website called remarriageworks.com. It's a go-to resource for remarriage and step-family living. And this was a follow-on to a hard copy magazine. My original business plan was to create a magazine because when I got engaged to be remarried, first thing I did, I got all the bridal magazines. And I'm looking through them, and I'm like, these don't do a thing for me. I didn't want to wear the long white poofy dress again. I was dealing with 5 kids between my 2 and my husband's 3. And so I said, one day when I retire in my 60s, I want to start a magazine for remarrying brides. So I kept a little journal, and I thought, well, that's a ways away, so I'll just keep track of ideas. Never ran out of editorial, because my life is a microcosm of probably any problem that could pop up. I was divorced and deal with an ex in joint custody, including of a child with special medical needs, which adds another extra twist. And then my husband had been a widower when I met him. So his kids, I think, were aged 8 to 14 when they lost their mom. So we have a lot of different dynamics in our family. We've been married almost 9 years, and those dynamics still continue today as the kids go from age to age and mature. So I'm bringing this up because I just want you to be aware of the remarrying couple's needs as you provide your products and services to them. Another website we have is remarriageshowcase.com, which is a premier event for the remarrying bride. And I have the pleasure of hosting our 2nd annual one in Leesburg on March 10th. And A Splash of Elegance, Victoria Wagner's here. They are planning our event again. And I just invite you all to check out that website in case you want to come out and visit. So for the have you heard, the next slide, please. This is from a Pew Research Center report. It was featured in the Time magazine in fall of 2010, and they had another report in 2011 Basically, they said that the marriage is on the decline. Have you heard of this? Anyone? Okay. So barely half of the US adults are now married. That's a record low. New marriages are down 5% in 1 year. Some project that that may be related to the economy. A lot of people are saying people want to be divorced, but they're staying together because they can't afford to divorce. In 1960, 72% of all adults 18 and up were married. Now it's just 51%. And then I won't read that last quote to you, but if you can take a minute to read that. They're basically saying there's a growth in cohabitation, single-person households, and single parenthood. So does this concern anyone, knowing that a lot of your industries are related to the wedding business? Does it scare anyone? My initial response to this was, oh my gosh, how am I going to have a business in remarriage if people aren't even getting married anymore? But I'm trying to motivate you because that's what happened with me. I think it's a motivator. Next slide, please. Because it's a niche, and any niche is an opportunity. This is a quote from a professor at Colorado State University. And I really want to point out that niche markets are particularly interesting for operations looking to grow or change. And as we all know as business owners, we rarely just stay stagnant and succeed. And next slide, please. These are some ways to grow your business. I'm sure you've heard of many of them, if not all of them. But I basically wanted to show this as a reminder that even if a market is shrinking, marriage being on the decline, let's assume, you can still stand out. You can create visibility with new audiences. You can create new audience experiences. You can differentiate your brand, reach a niche market, draw attention to a social issue, be seen as the only, and of course the bottom line, as we all know, increase sales. Now, I'd like to go to the next slide, please. Thanks. The benefits of targeting a niche market. It's easier to plan effective marketing activity, simpler to develop a winning sales message, tailor your message to focus on solutions, and then create different sales messages. By no means am I saying, okay, marriage is on the decline, stop what you're doing and go do something totally different. I'm not saying that at all. I don't think marriage as an institution will go away in my lifetime. And then there's always the argument that someone can say, well, you know, the gay marriages are on the rise, so what's that going to do to the marriage statistics? So there's a lot, take statistics with a grain of salt. But what I am trying to point out here is that you can serve one niche or you can serve multiple niches. There are a lot of multicultural bridal shows showing up. And I just saw one today that is for a black bridal show, it was called, in New Orleans. And I thought, wow, I never heard of that. I think it was the first one that I've seen. I don't know if anybody's heard of a multicultural or a black bridal. Atlanta, okay. But and our remarriage showcase is the first one that I think is addressing the needs of Encore brides and grooms. And sometimes Encore brides may be a misnomer because that bride may be a single career gal that may be marrying a guy who was divorced or widowed with children. So it really is for families, step families that are forming, stepmoms to be, and Encore brides. Well, my point is, you can tap into any one of these markets or all of them simultaneously. You can create things, products, services, and marketing messages, etc., that are tailored to each of these market segments. And it can be a way to stand out. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the remarriage audience. 1,300 new step families form every single day. A lot of people are shocked when I start talking about these numbers because people will say, oh yeah, I never thought about it like that. I do know a lot of people that are getting remarried and have a step family. More than half of Americans today have been, are now, or will eventually be in a blended or a step family situation during their lives. I can even see it just anecdotally speaking. When I was doing research for my first business plan for the hard copy magazine, I would Google the word remarriage, and very little showed up. I would see probably the first 5, there'd be one page of results, and maybe the first 5 were a lot of religious debate, biblical things, people saying, you know, you're going to burn in hell for getting divorced and all that. And let me be the first to say, I'm not pro-divorce. That's sometimes I get that comment. Well, wait a minute, you're for divorce. No, I'm not. What I'm trying to do is keep the remarriages together so they don't re-divorce. The divorce rate for second marriages is between 60 and 70%, depending upon which study you look at. The divorce rate for first marriages is at 50%. So the numbers are really shocking, and we'll get into a little bit about why those second marriages are divorcing at a higher rate. It's counterintuitive to many, because sometimes people think, oh, been there, done that, I'm more mature now, you know, I'm experienced, we're wiser, and they think that that may lead to a higher success rate, but it doesn't, the stats are showing. I've also seen an increase in stepmom bloggers. I've seen an increase in communities online, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. See a lot more groups dealing with stepmoms in particular. There's also more coaches that are certified in stepfamily and stepmom coaching. And I also see a bigger effort amongst counselors to focus on stepfamily issues. A study just came out that said that counselors should have specialized training in dealing with stepfamilies because they've proven, and I'll have to look up if you want to know the source, I could get it to you later, but they're proving that the traditional counseling solutions that they recommend to first-time families is not working for stepfamilies. Also, there's a new nonprofit that's been stood up, the USA Blended Family Association, which I see this as a good sign as more people are starting to take notice to stepfamilies, their challenges, and most importantly, solutions to these challenges. I'm going to digress a minute too and say, okay, if you're not in a stepfamily or none of your loved ones are in a stepfamily, why should you care? And it's been proven that there's a high cost to society, especially when it comes to taxes and being used for the cost of divorce. There's a big, heavy price that every citizen is paying for the high divorce rates in this country. Next slide, please. Nearly 103 million people are remarried in the United States. They're either remarried or considering remarriage, and of course that's after divorce or widowhood. That's about 1/3 of the United States population, and that's a big, huge market. And I don't know a lot of businesses that are tailoring their products and services to this market. But as my friend and colleague Martha Wiles from A Splash of Elegance says, you could even have a tire company that's making a campaign towards a stepfamily. You know, we went from 2 kids to 5 kids, and did I need a bigger car? Yes. Of the 2.4 million weddings that take place in the United States each year, nearly half are second weddings. And you know the bridal market more than I do, but I assume it's in the billions of dollars. Half of marriages end in divorce, and within 5 years of divorcing, 89% of the men remarry, and 79% of the women walk down the aisle again. And 64% of Americans reported in a survey that my company conducted in 2008, it is getting a little dated, but I think important. They reported that it's easier to find a diet they can stick to than to find resources for their remarriage that are helpful. So the bottom line is they need a lot of help. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, when you're engaged to remarry, it's your second chance for happiness, you're excited, you know, it's fun, you just are so happy. There's a lot of problems and challenges that can come up that you're just not expecting. And I think there's healthy, positive ways that we could help them when they're in that engagement stage or planning their wedding stage. Next slide, please. So let's unveil this remarriage audience. 65% of remarrying couples have children. 80% of the women are career women. They're primarily mid-30s and older. These women are intelligent, sophisticated, well-informed, mature. Less than 1% of people that are getting remarried have sought information from existing traditional bridal magazines. That's from one of our studies, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to create one. And remarrieds boast increased spending power. 33% report that their financial situation has or will improve upon remarriage. So a lot of times people they'll picture maybe the person that was very dependent on the one spouse that's leaving, and they're left destitute because he took them for everything they had, or vice versa, and that's not necessarily the case. 15% report that they have or will have more than double the cash to spend freely as remarrieds. There aren't a lot of people that are keeping data on this. I'm familiar with the wedding report and some different sources that talk about how much do people spend on their first wedding, where do they have their first wedding, how is that pie chart of money divvied up between the different expenditures. There isn't a lot of that first-hand data for remarriage, and so we're trying to capture a lot of that right now on remarriageworks.com. Next slide, please. So how can you in your business add value to the remarriage audience? And I would imagine some of this would apply if you were going to do multicultural focus or particular nationality focus or religious focus, etc. But intake questionnaires. These are just questions that I want to throw out there as food for thought for you. As you have a potential client, do you have a process whereby you're engaging them to identify, is the man or the woman, are they a parent? Is it a remarriage? Now, I understand that could be awkward to ask sometimes, but perhaps it could be in a questionnaire, and it can be explained why you're asking. It's because you want to provide the best services and products that meet their family's needs. Perhaps unique themes. My former editor, she was a real outdoorsy type person. She met her husband hiking, and so when they got married, they had a wedding cake, tons of kids in a park, and had the wedding cake like a mountain and all the animals on the cake, and those were the favors that the kids got to bring home. So there were a lot of unique themes that could be carried out, I think, especially that pertain to children. You could provide value by adding advice into how to include those children, not only in the planning but in the ceremony. Our website's often asked, what do we do with the children? Is it proper that they are in my wedding party? Can they be my best men and my maid of honor? What do we do with the little ones? Should we risk having them come down the aisle? What do we do with all the kids and all the little cousins while we have our wedding day? And I've learned a lot from Martha at Splash of Elegance. She has some really good ideas about, how to make things easier for the children. In hindsight, when we had 5 kids, I don't think I thought enough about making sure that each of my children and my stepchildren had someone there that day. I wish I did that. I had one child that kind of withdrew, very shy, and everybody was trying to just drag him on the dance floor. What's wrong with you? Get involved, One thing that happens in a remarriage is that everybody's coming from a place of grief. Everybody's in a different stage of grief, and the grief can be from divorce or death. And the parents are grieving in different stages, and the children are all grieving at different stages, and it can take years. They say it takes 7 to 12 years for a stepfamily to quote-unquote successfully blend. And there's one Dr. Papper now that says it can take 12. So I'm in year 9, and I can say that we're not totally successfully blended of what I thought we would be. It's growing, it's evolving, it gets better and better every year. But this is something that a lot of people don't realize before they get remarried. So I think you could help them in the process to point some of these things out. And again, all in a positive way to help enable their success. As a side note, for our remarriage showcase, when I did the first one in Baltimore in 2009, we had the wedding vendors, and then we had people that were remarriage and step-family experts. So we had the family law attorney, and we had the estate planner, the financial advisor. Okay, is that like having the skunks at the garden party? Like why would I come to a bridal show and see the divorce attorney? It was very counterintuitive, but it's all in presentation. When the family law attorney came and talked about, okay, this is great, but realize you may have to deal with your ex on visitation, for example, after your wedding day, it puts it in a whole new light, and it can very well be a positive light. There's also added value when you talk about honeymoon and family moon planning, destination weddings, and resort reviews. Some resorts are ideal for remarrying couples. We had a resort at our last showcase that really was special for families because every family got a vacation nanny that was assigned to them for the entire vacation period. So that, a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that existed. So that's, pointing those things out to your clients could be extremely helpful. Suggestions regarding etiquette. When I was getting remarried, I had my husband's first set of in-laws were invited because his first wife had died before I met him. And so he was still very close to that first set of in-laws. Well, I was in no way prepared for what happened when I was at my wedding, and then I guess it triggered grief in his first wife's family members. And so there I am going through the receiving line, and I have people bawling and sad, and it just totally threw me for a loop. And I had a planner that was there at the venue. It was a destination wedding, but it really wasn't somebody that had talked me through the process of this could happen. And I just think if you go in eyes wide open, it's so much better. And it's kind of like that book that's been written, What to Expect When You're Expecting. It's almost like what to expect when you're getting remarried would be extremely helpful. The other thing could be, going back to those in-laws, my question was, well, where do we seat them? I have my family, my husband has his family, where do we put his first wife's family? So all kinds of things popped up like that. There's also added value and ideas for Encore bridal dress. One of the biggest, most often asked questions that I see online is, what do I wear to my second wedding? There's all kinds of discussions online, pictures being posted. My friend wants to wear this. She's 60 years old, and it's a long white poofy dress, and I just think it's ridiculous. And so you see everybody commenting on it. But that's a big discussion topic. They could really use some assistance from Soliloquy. And, and by the way, I'm going to do a plug here. Miriam and Soliloquy are doing the fashion show for our upcoming showcase, and it's featuring all kinds of Encore bridal wear. Some fabulous destination wedding dresses, too. So I hope you can come see that. Maybe you can add value by special packages. One of the things that's very challenging for a new step-parent is to bond with those new stepchildren. So perhaps you can recommend a little outing prior to the wedding day where the guys go do an activity that they all like and are drawn to, and maybe the girls go and have a spa day. Just try to help that family any way you can, create some bonding experiences prior to the wedding day, and don't forget the children. Another added value is resources showing that you understand their needs, maybe even before they do, and I'd like to change that to probably even before they do. One of the things that is out there is step-family counseling, step-family coaching. There tends to be a stigma sometimes with counseling, but I'm very impressed with the step-family counselors that I've met, and it's very proactive. I know my husband and I went to see a step-family counselor before we were even remarried. We wanted the kids to have another adult in their life that they could talk to if they wanted to. I don't think that's something that people think of normally. Those kids may still be having challenges from the divorce or from death of a parent. The other kinds of resources that would be helpful, I think, would be books. There's all kinds of books out there on step-family blending, how to deal with exes. There's one book called Joint Custody with a Jerk. There's a book called The Remarriage Checkup. It's not thousands of books out there, but there are more and more than I would see 6 years ago. And if you become familiar with some of these resources, some of which are featured on remarriageworks.com actually, that can be value added. You can learn things from them and help these clients. You can actually give them as gifts, So here's another plug. Sorry, Tara. I have a journal for stepmoms that I published, and it's just a journal where the stepmoms can write in it. But what's important, I think, is that it'll shed some light on what the challenges are that stepmoms commonly face. So that could, if you're an event planner, for example, and you just get a new client that doesn't have children, is going to have stepchildren, maybe you want to give them a copy of a book. So just something to think about. Next slide, please. This is just to show the baggage. Don't forget the baggage. The top reason for a first marriage to divorce has been written is financial issues. For a second marriage, there's two top reasons. One is financial issues, and one is issues related to children. So the devil's always in the details. When my husband and I were getting remarried, we talked about, well, let's talk about our philosophies on college for the kids. So he said his view, I said mine. We came to an agreement. Yeah, we're going to pay for all 5 kids to go up through a bachelor degree, and then they're on their own. So we thought, check. Next topic, and we thought we were being pretty smart covering all these topics, and we're halfway intelligent, this is going to work. Well, when the first child came time to go to college, that's where it got a little tough, because I came to find out that my husband's philosophy, and he had been telling his kids for years, so that was their expectation, that they could apply to anywhere they wanted in the world, and he would just find a way to finance that. My being divorced, my philosophy was, well, I'll pay for you to go to college, but here's the financial threshold, and you'll have to cover the rest. So when it came time for us to really talk about where the kids were going to apply to, even things like, I said, well, okay, you can only apply to 5 or 4 or whatever because it's $200 an application. And he said, oh, apply to as many as you want. That caused a lot of problems. So it really is the devil's in the details, and a lot of times we don't think about these. Same thing with wedding things. So many things pop up that you don't expect until you're sitting there. And taking pictures at the wedding, that is a very touchy subject for stepfamilies. There's a story, I won't give attribution, but line up all the kids for the wedding picture, and a grandma pulls the step-grandchildren out and says, I just want my kids in this picture. And that can really make for a tough day. So if you help smooth that over, photographers, event planners, work with your clients, because it really can broadside people when it's happening. And I don't think people mean to be mean or intend to be mean. It's just that extended family often doesn't understand stepfamily dynamics either. Another thing to do is to give referrals to each other. If you're in a business-to-business relationship, our remarriage showcase is a great example. We had an insurance expert there. We had a financial advisor expert there. What happens down the pike, they now both know that they each reach out to the remarriage audience. You can start doing referrals in your network based on, hey, I know the perfect person for you, and you get remarried. So that's another benefit of serving the remarriage audience or any niche audience. There's also Encore bridal specialists, people that really specialize in this. So you can make it part of your title, one of your specialties. Next slide, please. Some other ideas on what your business can offer. We have unique products, the venues. I talked about having an outdoor park venue. Invitations. My company has created a line of second wedding invitations. One of my challenges when I got remarried is all the invitations said, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so invite you to their daughter's wedding. Well, I didn't want that. My parents weren't paying for it. I wanted to really include our 5 children somehow. And I went everywhere. I went online. I went to all the stores. Couldn't find a thing. So we got married in Martha's Vineyard, and I just ended up going to a calligrapher. I'm not an artistic person. And said, maybe make some grapevines around the edging and write the kids' names in the grapevines or something. But now I have a line that not only pictorially shows the blending of families, but also in the wording, which is really important because that could be a keepsake for that family for many years to come. Another thing is gifts. There are so many things that you can advise remarrying couples to do for gifts. I know a lot of them don't want gifts. We had 3 sets of china, we had 2 blenders, we had 2 full sets of homes. So what were we going to do? And so an event planner could really help guide that couple or their guests or how they want to handle a registration. A question I see online a lot is, should I even register? How's that viewed? I mentioned Encore bridal apparel. You could have cakes with meaningful themes. I mentioned that earlier. The planning advice. Items and gifts for family members. Inclusiveness is key. So I know the holidays is a particularly trying time for step families because many times extended family members will just give gifts to the younger kids that are biologically connected to them and forget the steps, and there's all kinds of problems that pop up. And that can pop up at wedding time too. So if you could point out things to the remarrying couple, like don't forget the kids, you know, I have a little gift for them. Thank them for being in your wedding party. What would be a great gift for them? So we've had a couple articles on Remarriage Works that talk about the best gifts. I also wrote an article on the best gifts in the Washington Times, and none of them were something you could buy. You know, when a remarried couple gets married with children, there is no honeymoon phase at the beginning. There's no lying on the polar bear rug in front of the fireplace drinking wine with 5 kids. So you have to wait till they grow up, and then you have your honeymoon time. But the thing is what can you do that's special for that couple? And having a sitter come in and giving them a date night, just the smallest little thing could be so valuable. You know, maybe you get the gift idea could be give these couples, you know, a night out once a month and all the family members take a turn once a year. Something like that. And it's just things that people don't think of because they're just not aware, they haven't experienced it. The destination wedding, the family travel, I talked about that a little bit. I'd like to talk about the family moon real quick. When we had 5 kids, you couldn't just take off and go to Tahiti for 2 months and, you know, leave them with who? No, the grandparents didn't even know them on both sides. So a lot of people go on family moons and they look for resorts that will allow them to have some special couple time. At the same time, they know there are activities that are safe and the kids are safe in these resorts. And Dana was telling me earlier about one, Mexico, you said? So I wish I knew about that earlier too. So I'd like to just open up the floor and brainstorm and talk about ideas that you think would be helpful, or just talk about remarriage in general. I'm really open to anything.
Let me ask a question. What do you think are the best ways to market to the Encore bride and that family?
Okay, did everyone hear? What are the best ways to market to the bride and that family? That's one of the things we've been working on very heavily over the past couple of years with regards to our showcase. I would highly recommend the social media to try to find where the stepmom groups are. There are a lot of them on Facebook. I know our event, and I have brochures for anybody that wants one, is really the only event that I'm aware of that focuses solely on the remarrying couple, the bride in particular. And I have a video, but I don't think we could get the sound today. But if anybody wants to look at the video, it's on remarriageshowcase.com, or you could come up after I talk and I'd be happy to show you on my computer. But it's an event that starts with a champagne brunch. We have a fashion show. We have exhibitors from not only the wedding industry businesses, but also those other businesses that help step families, the financial advisor, the family law attorney, estate planner. And this really applies to brides of all ages. It's not just like a 35-year-old bride with children. There are brides that get remarried in their golden years, and those families face tough challenges. I was at the ballpark one day, and there was a 40-something-year-old woman that said, "Oh my gosh, my mom's getting remarried. She's 70 years old, and you know she wants us to come there and spend Christmas and pretend we're sisters with them. Are you kidding me?" So every age group has the challenges. So I recommend events such as ours. I recommend social media. I recommend finding out where the stepmom groups are meeting. There's a couple, I think, in the DC area on Meetup. So those are usually people that are already remarried, but I know of some that are engaged and join that. And feel free, I have my card here, so anybody can feel free to call me. I'd be happy to work with anyone. Okay.
It sounds like a lot of your statements have focused on the bride.
Mm-hmm.
Over the past, 5 to 10 years, I've noticed a dramatic increase of grooms being involved, particularly in the first time around. With the remarriage, are the grooms not as involved in terms of the way they are with the first time around?
That's a good question, thanks. The question is, with the first-time marriages, you see a lot of grooms getting involved in the planning process, and do I see that with the second marriages? To be honest, I see the grooms involved. I do see at our showcases a couple of the grooms, especially the one in Baltimore. I know for sure we had like 3 grooms that came with the bride. I don't want to generalize and say grooms aren't interested. I don't think that would be fair. It could be the marketing because, you know, a lot of it is geared towards the bride. That's in the title. I think that I really want grooms to come because the issues that create the divorce usually involve 2 people. And I think it's just as important to take care of what's going to happen after that wedding day as it is, or if maybe even more, than to just plan the wedding day. So when you think about finances and estates and mortgages and insurance, I really hope the guys come out to that.
Paula, do you have a wedding remarriage questionnaire already developed that we can tweak and use within our own business in the wedding industry, or is it something we would need to create from scratch?
I have some stuff in-house, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody on a case-by-case basis. I don't have anything productized, so to speak, on the website for sale. And we have a new sponsor, actually, from our showcase. She just wrote a book called Eat, Drink, and Remarry. It's not a wedding planning guide. I am aware that there's one or 2 second wedding guides that have been out there for several years, but the feedback that I've received is that they're just touching the surface. It doesn't get to the emotional issues that pop up. It doesn't get to the, well, what if grandma pulls the one kid out of the picture? You know, that kind of thing. But I'm happy to work with anybody, look at your business, have a discussion with you, and talk about how I can be of value to you as you build your business. Yes.
I've seen statistics where people get married for the first time and there's an average number of attendees at a wedding and an average budget. Is there any kind of indication of that for remarriage?
Great question, too. Right now on the homepage of remarriageworks.com, that is the subject matter, and we're basically asking people, how much did you spend on your second wedding? Where did you have it? And there's the 5 questions total. So we're compiling that data right now. If you want to talk, I'd be happy to share some of that with you. The general sense that I get is that remarriages take place year-round. It isn't like they're tied to any particular month. October seemed to be the one that stood out a little bit, and maybe August, but I think the August one especially is people are trying to get remarried before the kids get back into school. I think they paid a lot of attention to that. And I can talk to you about, I don't want to come out and publish it yet because I don't think the survey sampling is big enough. Until I get about 1,000, I just have some, feelings about it and trends. Cindy?
I just wanted to mention to everybody that Paula contributes to Brides and Weddings of Northern Virginia. She has an awesome story in the current issue that's called Don't Forget the Kids, which talks about blending families and activities that you can do to try to build that bond and how to incorporate children into your wedding ceremony. So feel free to pick up a copy on your way out so you can read Paula's article.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Thanks. No, hey, I appreciate the opportunity.
Just to kind of go off that, I never heard of this until recently. I have a good girlfriend who's actually getting married next month to a man who's been divorced and has kids. And they set up a really neat thing. Instead of having a registry, through their honeymoon, they are taking the children, and they have just suggested, it's actually set up online. It's very simple. You can go to the resorts that they're staying at, and you can actually pay. It would be like giving a gift. You can pay for different activities for the family. So I know as for my present, I went in with a couple of my girlfriends, and we booked one of the zip lining days. So it's a family event. Like, I thought that was really neat and something that I had never heard of until very recently. So that could be something.
Yeah, I think that would be much appreciated by them. And what's the name of that company?
It's somewhere in Hawaii. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was completely on their registry, all they had was the hotel, and it had set up the different activities that they had requested. So it was very simple. It took 5 minutes. It was actually brilliant to me.
Yeah,
Just to
it
think
is.
it, and it's something that they can do with the whole family. So going back to the whether or not it was, they don't need a blender like you were saying.
Right.
Give a gift that the whole family can really enjoy. I thought that was awesome.
Right.
I
well, thank you
can't
for
remember
sharing
the name.
that.
I can email you the name of the resort because I know they specifically looked into resorts that had a bunch of the family activities.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
All I'll send you some resources. There are a lot of honeymoon registries or family registries out there.
Oh, good. Did everybody know that? I didn't know there were so many out there. That's good news. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you very much for having me this evening, and I hope to see some of you at the Remarriage Showcase at River Creek, March 10th. And I have my card, so if anybody would like to connect, I'm more than happy to connect with you and talk to you about how I can help you grow your business. Thank you.